Welcome, everyone, to the Songwriters on Process podcast. My name is Benno Papari, and on this podcast, I take a deep dive into the writing process behind some of the world's best songwriters. By way of background, I am a former English professor. I have a PhD in English language and literature, and I'm a writer myself. So this is a conversation about writing between two writers. My goal has always been to treat songwriters the same way that we treat prose writers, just as writers, plain and simple. So that's all we focus on. I don't care about tour stories, favorite bands, how bands get their name, favorite foods, anything like that. This is, again, a deep dive into the songwriting process with some of the world's best songwriters. And with that, let's get into today's episode. And today on the pod, it is Donovan Woods. Wood's latest EP out now is called Squander Your Gifts. And I feel like if you needed a 30 or 35 minute podcast episode filled with nothing but pull quotes about the songwriting process, packed with advice about the process, this would be it. I finally gave up writing down all of these great lines he gave me, but you should absolutely listen to this for all of them. First of all, when I mentioned the poet Paul Muldoon, who I had on a couple of months ago, Muldoon is one of the most iconic poets of the last 100 years. When I interviewed him on the pod, you can check that out. And Woods is a big fan of Paul Muldoon. So, of course, that sold it on me. I mean, I obviously have been a fan of Woods before this podcast, but that sold me for sure. We talked about Paul Muldoon, and that morphed into why poetry is important. And poetry is important for everyone. Not just songwriters, why we should be reading more poetry. Here's a great quote about what a good song does. He said, "A good song asks questions rather than providing wisdom." Ooh, I get goosebumps even just saying that. A lot of things I talk about with songwriters is why it's important to start writing bad stuff. But Woods is not down with that. He says that he hates writing bad songs. He said he doesn't like the feeling of finishing a bad thing. And when he says that, it kind of makes sense. And possibly the best advice, and this is a feature of every interview I do, when he has writer's block, he says it's because he's not reading enough. And that is why reading is so important to all writers, not just songwriters. I've always said that if you don't read, you cannot be a good writer. It is very simple. We talked a lot about walking, the importance of walking, and I think the last 3 minutes of this episode is nothing but him rattling off all of the authors that he loved. But doesn't that make sense? If you're a voracious reader, you're a great writer. And that's certainly the case with Donovan Woods. So again, Donovan Woods' latest EP out now is called Squander Your Gifts. And here's my episode with Donovan Woods. All right, so I always start with a very basic, simple question that is, do you think it's important to create in some fashion every day, doesn't matter what it is, or do you feel like giving things a rest occasionally may make you more productive when it does come time to write?
I think that changes all the time for me. I think if my ideal day is I make something new that it did not exist before. Ideally, for someone whose job is songwriter, it would be great if it was a song, but it's also great if it's something else. I think just making something out of nothing, even if it's just a paragraph of writing, a poem, anything, is the ideal use of a day for me. If it includes that, I think my ideal day is if I don't drive a car and I make something. That to me would describe a perfect day. But yeah, it's not, but also I'm at this age, I can feel in my body if I'm going to be able to write a song. I can just feel it. And when I know that I'm going to be able to do it, I sit down to do it. And if I don't think I'll be able to do it, I don't do it because it's too discouraging. I'll do something else.
I love that. So how do you know? What is that feeling like?
I don't know. It usually comes from language. I'll read something, I'll read a poem, or I'll read just a bit of a book or something, and I'll know. I can't really describe the feeling. I just feel full of words, and I think oh, I bet you I can do it. I bet you I can do it right now. And then I'll go and fish around and try to see what I can come up with. but it's just a feeling. And there are some days when I know certainly without a doubt I would fail if I tried. And sometimes it's like, why put yourself through it? So I don't do it.
Okay, a couple of follow-ups. One, so when it's not happening for a few days, does that make you anxious at all? Are you good with something not happening if it's for, 3 or 4 or 5 days or in a row or something like that?
I'm totally fine with it. I don't, I have to like, I think about, um, the way I ease myself about it is that I don't, honestly, I think if you wrote one really good unassailable song every year, you'd be in the Hall of Fame. Um, most of the people that you love have people who are household names have 5 songs that everybody likes, 3 songs that everybody likes, that are sort of undeniable. And I just don't think it's that easy. It doesn't happen that often. It's not that easy. And I think if you go a week or a month without getting anything that's useful, I don't think it's like the end of the world as long as you stay devoted to the idea of like input of like of looking for language and thinking about language. Eventually something will happen, you know.
So is that the input of language, is that deliberate for you? Are you I mean, I hear songwriters tell me they have their antenna up all the time. And is that a deliberate thing? Like when you go out, are you consciously looking for things? I think you can just passively take things in and realize after a while, oh, that resonated with me. Or when you go out, how finely tuned are you to conversations that you hear, billboards with a cool phrase or something like that?
I'm kind of doing it always, constantly. I have friends who are like hyper fixated on it to the point where, they're probably spectrum people where they're sort of floating above consciousness all the time and operating on a level that like, they'll show me their list of, we all have a titles list or like a list of language that's resonant with us, Um, I'm pretty much always doing it, but it's not like ruining my life. I have people whose it seems to be affecting their their social skills because they're just listening to language, trying to figure out. But yeah, certainly in conversation, those things come up in conversation a lot. Usually, I find it's language that's a placeholder for other feelings. And an example, like when people go at the end of the day, or these types of things that have become like placeholders for actual explanations that we all accept as another example, and I wrote a song about it, is saying about a breakup, oh, we grew apart. Well, there's more to that situation, but that's just an understanding that we've had, that when we hear that, we don't go any further because it's like they don't really want to talk about the real reason they broke up. So I find in conversation you'll come across things like that, just language that's capacious and it's like pithy. There's more to it. And if you write that down, usually something comes of it later. But yeah, also a billboard. Yeah, like copywriting is really interesting because it's people have really wrung it out to try to make it the purest essence of communication that they can. And it often is pretty pithy, like, yeah.
There's a writer, I think William Zinsser. He's got one of the classic books on writing called On Writing Well. And I think he's the one that said, if a phrase comes to you too easily, don't use it because that means you've seen it before, you've heard it before. And I think that's always a challenge. I mean, how do you create original language? But I love that idea though, and I'm curious as a songwriter where it's very easy to devolve into cliche. Does that ever happen to you where you think something comes to you too easily and it's because, yeah, you know, somewhere I saw that. So I'd love to expand on that idea if that makes sense.
Yeah, like I think the way I'm talking about those, it's a piece of cliched language like that. Um, those pieces of language have a feeling, and then a song about that would be unpacking that feeling that we have from that piece of language and what the feelings that are actually underneath that sort of stock canned language that we all use. You know what I mean? Um, Another one that I've used is I remember walking in an airport and watching a guy tap another guy in the chest and go, "Next year, dude, next year." And that line, they had whatever, they lost a softball game, their pitch at their like business meeting didn't go well, whatever it was. But there was so much meaning in that language, and then I felt like, oh, there's some story in there. There's some amount of language that can unfurl from that. But it's like, I don't know, it's different when you're writing, when you're storytelling. I don't know. I think I'm not sure. I haven't done much of it. I've done a bit of it, but not a ton of it. I think songs don't really have to answer any questions. I think sometimes the story has to answer the questions it poses, or at least like hint at what the. I just think a good song asks questions really well, which is why music is dominated by young people because that's what young people do. They push buttons and they answer questions, and that's what a really good song does. It just pushes buttons and asks questions, rather than providing some sort of wisdom.
But so does good. That's what good poetry does too.
Yeah,
I mean, good poetry is never ever about the subject. Like the John Donne poem, "The Flea," is not about a flea. I mean, there's much deeper than that. I think it's John Donne. I think it is. But yeah, I mean, good poetry is like that too, isn't it? That it's never about the topic that you're reading.
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think that's the sort of idea of those that when language strikes me, it's because it feels like there's more being unsaid, And then and then if you can find another after you write that for, a line strikes you and it feels like there's more to that line than's being said, and then you come up with another one and there's more to that one that is being said, and then the next one there's more to that one too, and then all of a sudden you're building a world, rather than just writing a bunch of lines in a song.
So I want to talk about the initial stages of writing. So I interviewed the poet Paul Muldoon a couple
Oh
of
wow,
months ago.
cool, dude. I'm a
Yeah, exactly.
Big Muldoon head, dude.
Are you really? Oh, well, you
Oh
got
yeah,
to
big time.
listen to the pod. It was on within the past couple months, and
Oh nice.
I mean, I taught Paul Muldoon when I was a professor. If you've taken anyone who's taken any poetry class, for those people who don't know, Paul Muldoon is a fixture. He's really one of the most
Yeah.
iconic poets of the last 50 years.
I've
But
got his collected works for Christmas. That was my main Christmas gift from my wife. Like one that's from Ireland, like a real. Anyway, I was very excited.
yeah, and I saw him. I've seen him give readings before. But anyway, he has a side gig for fun as a songwriter. He has like a garage rock band. He said something. He said prose writers are going to hate when I say this, but he said I can't write the second line of a poem until the first line is perfectly formed and will not be changed because everything in that second line, from the images to the sound, depends on the first line. So he edits as he goes. And as a prose writer, that's the kiss of death. You would never do that. But
Right.
that blew my mind when he said that he can't, because the second line won't work if it's not attached to the first one. So I'd love to get your take on that.
I certainly relate to that feeling. I think, and I have recently been writing, putting together some stuff for a pitch for a memoir, and yeah, all the recommendations is like you just dump it out, and then you go back and you refine it, and you start to feel, and it's not instinctual for me because I have often described songwriting as that feeling of like you're walking a tightrope. Every line is a tightrope, is a step on the tightrope, and there are there are so many ways to screw it up, and every single line can screw up the whole thing, and the fourth line you write can mess up this third, second, and first one. It's just ripples out, and yeah, that feels like what it has to all hold that tension, and I'm sure that's what I love about poetry too, is when you're in the hands of someone really good, it doesn't unravel. It doesn't unravel. You're not taken out of it by some language that doesn't resonate. It just goes, it's like you're being rung like a bell every line over and over again. And man, when it works, it's really good. And I have experienced it, in songs that I have songs on records that I go, there's a line in it that undoes it all for me, undoes the spell, takes you out of the spell. And if you do your job right, the spell stays intact. but you don't get to do it all the time. It's really hard, you know. Just like the same as when you read through someone's collected works of poetry, not everyone does it for you, you know.
I was going to ask you about reading later, but let's talk about it briefly now because I could maybe count on two hands now the number of songwriters who read poetry, which is deeply distressing to me that they don't. But I mean, I know that you're not that there's a difference obviously between songwriting and poems, but you can still learn so much. So I'd love to get your take on how you think, you know, make a pitch for why songwriters should read more poetry.
Well, I know that when I have felt, I don't feel very often, but when I have felt writer's block or that feeling of not being able to come up with anything, I know that it's because I'm not reading enough. I'm not taking in enough language. And poetry is a way, you know, not everybody has time to sit down and like leisurely read a book, especially if you have kids. It's very hard. And poetry is a way that you can get some really concentrated, powerful language into yourself. And honestly, you pick up a book of poetry, you come across one, you maybe read 10 lines. And if you're the type of person I am, that'll churn the waters for a whole day. You know what I mean? There's sometimes there's somebody hits upon a vein or explains something that you. I remember just the other day I was like picked up a John Updike book off my shelf and looked and read his description of looking at a map and all of the place names blurring so much that it made the bridge of his nose hurt. And I was like, Jesus, like just these types of things, you know, and poetry's full of that type of little descriptor that just resonates within you. And then if you just use that as a push to try to find language that does that gives you that same vibration, you know, I don't know. There's nothing better than it. To me, there's nothing. I mean, when a poem's good, that's the best. That's the I mean, I love to see a painting too. Fuck, I'll look at a painting all day. But like when a poem is good, to me, that's like the most human form, and I it affects me the most, certainly.
My favorite love poem that actually we had read at our wedding is Somewhere I've Never Traveled Gladly Beyond by E. E. Cummings. And there's an amazing line in there where he says, I think it's nobody, not even the rain, has such small hands. And it was, ooh, right? And it's just like, we could talk for days about what that line even means.
Right.
And it's a beautiful poem, full of images like that. But that's what I love about poetry is that you hear that line and you say, well, that doesn't make sense. And they say, well, it has to make sense because there's a reason why it was there. And then you can think about what that even means. We could have I love that's what and I agree with you. I just to say that I think poetry is a way to look at something. It's a way to see something you've never seen before.
Yeah, and I
Um,
think the thing that's so like what people it's so hard to articulate the thing that it does to somebody who I don't know, it just always sounds so pedantic. It sounds like you're talking about, you know, horoscopes or something to someone who doesn't read it all the time. And it feels so dreamy or something. But the reality is that like it really does do something. When somebody has described something, I mean, anybody who's experienced a lot of therapy has probably experienced that. You know, when a therapist articulates a problem that you're experiencing only interior, like
yeah.
with only interiority, and you're only, you know, and when a therapist articulates it exactly as you're experiencing it, the feeling is like it washes over you. It's like, okay, good. I have the words to describe this dread or something, you know. To me, it's the same thing with poetry. It's like it will describe that type of feeling that like, God, it's just such a relief. It feels like a relief to me all the time reading.
So what do you like about you do not have to convince me obviously, but what do you like about Paul Muldoon's poetry so much?
Yeah, so there's a lot of Paul Muldoon that I don't understand what he's talking about. There's a lot of talk of farming and agrarian concerns that I am not, uh, you know, like, but every once in a while, you know, one of every 10, same thing. It's like if you write, look, those poets that everybody knows the name of, they got two good poems. You know what I mean? I mean, obviously all of them are good, but they got two timeless or one time. And yeah, like I said, one of every 10 Paul Muldoon, there's something about being alive that he describes the feeling of being alive. Just the other day, it's one that I feel like I gotta steal for the title of a record or something, where he's talking about spring and he describes a feeling as I felt a feeling that has yet to enter the language.
Hmm.
And just what that does to thinking about like there are feelings that we haven't said in the language that doesn't have a word yet. And it made me think about modernity and the feeling of screen sickness and all this, like these feelings that we have now that are quite literally feelings that have not quite entered the language yet. We don't really know how to describe them yet. And I felt like, oh yeah, that's something that happens. There's something that's a new feeling that we haven't described yet. Just every once in a while there's something like that where I go, oh man, this guy is like vibrating at another level.
I interviewed the poet Lee Young Lee probably 15 years ago, and this is why he's a poet. He said he was working on a poem right now, or he wants to write a poem about he woke up one day and in the outline of the bed sheets, he saw the beauty of he and his wife's of their bodies in the outline of the bed sheets. Now, I see bed sheets, I see a messy bed. He sees the beauty, he saw the outline of the body in the bed sheets. And, like, I think I'm getting chills just even talking about that now because that's exactly what we're talking about is he saw something that no one else would see, but that's why he's a poet and I'm not,
Right.
because he saw the messy bed and he saw the outline of the bodies in there.
Right.
And I just went, "Ooh."
Yeah, it's like making associations and that's what songwriting is too. It's the same thing. It's like I'm describing a feeling. What other feelings does that feeling unlock in me? Just making associations. Like, you know, uh, feeling like not there's the feeling of being alive is present in so many little things. And just finding a through line through all those things to describe what it feels like to be alive is like, God, man, when somebody does it, it's so lovely.
I want to talk about writer's block because we touched on this briefly, and it sounds like you and I have the same hack, and that is that when I feel like I'm in a rut, I turn to different types of art. And we talked about sports before the official start of the podcast, but I think that's right because when I was growing up, and my friends and I would be watching football on a Sunday. What's the first thing we want to do when when we finish watching the NFL is we want to go outside and play football because
Right,
right,
right.
because we were watching it all day. But that's what it is. It's the same thing
Yeah.
with poetry, right? Is that to cure yourself of that rut, you expose yourself to that art form. And so that is still my hack is nothing is more
Yeah.
motivating to write than when I read good writing. But it reminds me
Right.
of when we were kids, we would do the same thing. So is that kind of your go-to if you feel like you're in a rut?
Yeah, it's mostly reading. It's not as much of not anymore listening to music. It used to be when I was a kid, I would listen to something that was really inspiring. I feel more and more disconnected to popular music. I think it's just a thing of age, or maybe it's the state of the music industry, but I don't feel as a part of it as I used to. So I think listening to music doesn't do it anymore. It's mostly reading for me. And or like working on a song with a friend, working on a song with someone who's really talented. Sometimes somebody I'm making a record right now with a producer who just is God, he'll just solve problems and in recordings in such a he's so adept at it that it's inspiring. It makes me want to write better because he really likes music and he really understands it in a way that I can't quite grasp. I'm more of a words person. Um, but yeah, it's like anything. It's like when your back hurts, the solution is not to rest your back, unfortunately.
That's true.
It's to exercise your back, which is the dream. It'd be nice if it was to rest it, but unfortunately, rest is like useless.
I'd love to see the transcript of this out of context. We're talking about lower back pain and about I don't understand music these days, right? Two old men talking about I don't
Right,
kids these days, right? And my back's
right,
killing
totally,
me, and I'm
totally.
like, I relate to that. Um, so I also interviewed the writer Anthony Doerr, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
he wrote All the Light We Cannot See and a bunch of other
Right.
books. So I want to get your take on this quote because I this blew my mind. He said, "I said, what do you think about writer's block?" He stopped me. He goes, "I don't believe in writer's block. Writer's block is a failure of courage." So, and I want to go back to something you said at the beginning because and I've got a William Faulkner quote up here. William Faulkner said, "Get it down, take a chance. Get it down, take chances. It may be bad, but it's the only way you can do anything good." So, m- most prose writers will say you got to start with the bad stuff to get to the good stuff. That's the only way to do it. You've got to wade through all that crap to get to the good stuff. But if I think I heard you correctly, that's not an idea that you subscribe to. You don't often, if you find that it's not happening or that you're writing stuff that's not good, you won't continue. Did I hear that correctly or what?
Yeah, I hate it. I don't like the feeling of writing a bad song. I know I'm doing it from the first line, and I don't like it. And finishing it is such a drag. It takes too much out of me. It's a lot of work to finish a song. It's a lot of work to even write a bad song. And I mean that's why a lot of people will spend their whole life writing bad ones and still think they're making progress. It's just, and maybe they are. I don't know. It's just not how I experience it. I don't like the feeling of finishing a bad thing. And when I know, certainly when I'm writing alone, if I don't think it's good, I will stop and I'll be like, oh, this isn't the right. I haven't figured out the right language yet, you know. And once you figure out it's like a narrowing of focus. It was interesting. I was listening to this thing about consciousness today, where they're talking about how consciousness is actually a narrowing of all of the inputs rather than an expansion from our minds. And I think like that's interesting. When I feel like I'm writing well, um, all of a sudden I know what words aren't going to be in this song. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like immediately, all of a sudden the suggestion of a word like, I don't know, magazine, you're like, there's no way that's in this song. There's no way the word tree is in this song. I don't know why, but suddenly it just goes lower and lower and lower until there's like 250 words that are going to be acceptable in here or for some reason, you know? And if I'm writing well, I can feel that. I can feel like, oh, I understand what the lexicon of this song is. And then it's an easier pathway.
Is it because those words are not poetic words? I mean, there are certain words and images that are more poetic than others. Is it because that's not it's not a word that sounds or an image that is poetic?
Yeah, sometimes it's like the way it feels in your mouth. Sometimes it's but sometimes it's because a word has a lot of baggage. It has like it's been used in many way in lots of ways. It's because or people would call that cliched or whatever. Um, and sometimes it's just because the story that you're telling or the narrator that you've created to tell the story, there's no way they would say that word, and there's no way they would say that word. There's just like and also, as a songwriter, I'm always trying to stick to my point of view, and I'm always trying to be the person that I am and be where I'm from. And there's words that like people where I grew up are not going to say, and like why would they? You know, they're words for losers.
The so those discarded song ideas, are they somewhere in a vault where will you ever return to those? Or if they're bad, you just go, "Yeah, this isn't happening. I'm never gonna touch this again."
I always keep them, and I have a dream. I dream that someday they'll be useful, and you know what? They never are. It's like when people say, "Hey," a lot of times people will go, "I have a song that's like pretty good. Would you try to fix it up with me?" I'm always like, "Let's just write another song," because that one is not good. And the experiencing fixing something up into something that's good, it's kind of mythological. It doesn't really occur in my experience.
Okay, so when it comes to lyrics, are you a pen and paper person or a computer person or phone person?
I'm mostly a phone person at this point, but I don't really. Although I have dreams of having a notebook that and I buy them and I buy a pen and I have a dream that I'll write stuff down and I never do it. But mostly like once I have decided on a melody and I've written, say a first verse and a chorus, I just do it in my head at that point. I'll just be doing it all day in my head in a way that's, detrimental to the rest of my life.
It's interesting to hear about like how technology has shaped obviously the songwriting process. And I interviewed not too long ago Mary Chapin Carpenter, and
Wow.
she told me it's a great story that, back in the day in the 80s before phones, what they would do is when they got song ideas, they would call their home line, leave a message on the answering
Yeah.
machine,
Yeah.
and then when they'd get off tour, they'd have 60 minutes of messages
Right.
from themselves on their machine. And I thought, wow, that was exactly the way that, and I was alive before phones, but I thought that's what they all did back then.
Yeah, I've heard about that. And I've heard also that they would mail things to themselves. They would just to have them posted, they would mail it. They would mail lyric sheets to themselves so that they would have a record of their creation, which I thought, yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, I would not trust that. That would be I can't I would never trust the mail service. Just I'd be that's not a
I feel
dig.
like
It's an
mail used to be good. I think it
right.
used to be better.
Uh, okay, so I want to focus more specifically on the ritual. I mean, we've talked about, I love reading, the Paris Review and interviews with authors. So I'd love to know, how important is the ritual to you? I mean, as far as time of day, certain room, certain chair, things you have to have with you, stuff like that.
I don't have the luxury of any of it. I have so many children and I just don't have the time. So it's like any time. It doesn't have to be anything in particular. I would love to like sit with a guitar, and I get to sometimes. Usually it's like late at night or early in the morning. Um, but I just try to be always doing it in some fashion, and I'm often not holding a guitar. The older I get, the less I play the guitar while I'm writing.
Is there a room or does that not matter? It's like a place.
I had a studio for a while before COVID, and then I just realized that I was just going there and taking naps, so I gave it up. I really liked it a lot, but I wasn't really doing anything there. I could be anywhere is the most frustrating part, like, and also there's times sometimes you'll be in a writing session with somebody and it's going bad and you think, God, I'd be better off. A better use of my time would honestly be reading or looking at a wall and thinking like that's really you just have to remind, and all the time you have these dreams of like some piece of gear unlocking some amazing musical secret that you've never, you think like if I get that little guitar pedal, it's gonna make me, or this guitar. Or when people are like, that guitar has songs in it, it's like, get out of here, dude. It's just, you have to just sit there and try to figure it out. I don't know, there's no little secret or anything that I try to absolve myself of any needs so that it can happen anywhere.
But see, if you push me, I'm going to say I'm much more of a morning person. I've never, even when I was in school, I was never a late night person. Uh,
That's been true of trying to write prose for me, certainly. And I think like when I do write poetry, it tends to happen in the morning. And I think this maybe just like I feel as I get older, my brain just sucks past 3 p.m. I think like it's just worse. I can feel it as worse. But I will still write things at night. I still write songs at night. Still seems to happen. I think there's something about being a little bit tired or a little bit sick that sort of undoes your I don't want to say your standards, your quality control standards. And you tend to find that the language you're coming up with when you're tired is a little bit more truthful than the language you'd love to write about.
I've heard that, but I've also heard people say that they are their best editors when they're fatigued because they are less likely to fight with themselves
Oh yeah, interesting. Yeah. They're less likely to be precious about a piece
and
of
critical.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. It's interesting. I had a writing teacher early on, a playwriting teacher in university, who she would always go when you're she would be like, "Get rid of that," and you'd be like, "Oh, I like that," and she'd go, "Good lines are a dime a dozen." And I think about it all the time, and I don't know if she even like whether that was really advice or not. I think about it all the time. That just is just to be like, just to have like a abundance mindset to be like, there's more to say, there's always more to say, but it's hard sometimes.
No, we have 4 kids.
Oh, good for
Uh,
you. Good for
and
you.
how many kids
That's
do you have?
hey, dude. It's three. You're killing
Okay.
me, dude. That's fucking 25% more kids you got. That's huge. It's math.
Although I will say this, that people ask, it's not like you go from 0 to 4. It's when you with our kids are like, I think it's like a 2-year gap between all of them. And so, when you have 4, you realize how easy 3 was. When you had 3, you realize 2 was a joke. Um, Really, like that's the one thing, and it just and my wife and I also started out as middle school uh teachers. And so once you've taught in the classroom, a- any number of kids in the house, as long as there's not 30, you can deal with it.
Yeah, that's
Um
right. Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
but here's my point. I find that having kids has actually made me much more disciplined because there's so little time. So, I mean, obviously our kids are way past the nap stage. Um, and well, we have teenagers, they do take naps. So when they're young kids and the kid's down for an hour, you realize I got an hour. I got to write. So I think that actually that made me more productive because I had so little time. So do you find that's the case with you?
I have not been. I would imagine that my productivity has gone way down since I began to have kids. But I also don't like, I just try not to think about it very much. I can't imagine that I'm more productive now. And like when I only have an hour, I don't even do it. And I just think like, but am just kind to myself. It's actually one of the only parts of my life where I can be kind to myself. Like if I come up with two lines that I like, I'll be like, "That's great. That's great. Good job. Good job, Donovan." I think like I literally will do that to myself because I think it's so hard. And I think it's so hard to write good songs. Even people who are really famous don't write very good songs. So it's like it's very hard. It's really hard. So I try to just be kind to myself, but I would imagine that I am less productive, I would say. But I think probably I write less bad songs, fewer bad songs than I did when I was 23. I wrote a lot of crappy songs.
You're giving me a lot of answers I've never heard before, which makes me wonder if everyone else has been lying to me all of these years that I don't know. Something's got to give. Now,
Yeah, I think I don't know. I think I don't have the gene to torture myself that people have. Like I torture myself enough. Like I hate myself. I hate my physical representation of myself. I can't even look at myself. But like I'm kind to myself in that environment for some reason. I think other people are really tortured by it all, and I don't feel as tortured by it. I don't know. I'm just lucky. I think it's just my default setting. I'm not like disciplined or I don't have any practice. I'm just more nice to myself about writing. I don't know why. I like it a lot. It's the only thing I like. So I don't wanna hate it. I don't wanna hate it. I wanna love it
yeah.
always. Yeah, yeah.
How about the role of movement, whether it's being outside, walking, exercising? How important is that to your process?
Like, walking is it, you know what I mean? Just walking. Like, I do that's what I am trying if I haven't walked, I'm not even really able to even think about whether something's good or not if I haven't done a bit of walking around. And most things will come to me. Problems, there'll be a solution. There'll be a really elegant solution, and it will come to you when you're walking around. I don't know why. I mean, there's probably some. I'm sure there's some evidence about why scientific evidence about why that's true. But it's like you're untrapped by. I don't know. There's just less constraint or something, and you'll be walking and you go, "Oh, obviously that's what it is."
Yeah,
And
I think it's incredible. Yeah.
yeah, I don't really understand it, but certainly it's just walking around. Yeah.
All right. So let's end with this. We talked about poetry, but what about prose writers? Who are some of your favorite prose writers? Or actually, I can tell that this is gonna. I can tell that
It's
with the big
overwhelming. It's
exhale,
overwhelming to
you
me.
were. Where do we start? So let me. Okay, let me focus that. Are you a genre person or an author person?
I'm an author person. Um, I the first thing that I really loved was Richard Ford, the sports writer, was the first book that I read. I've always felt like a middle-aged divorced man, even before I was one of those. And even when I was like when I was like 19, I felt like a middle-aged divorced man. I don't know how to explain that any better than that. But that book, The Sports Writer, and then Independence Day after it, and then there's a trilogy of them, The Lay of the Land. I just like absorbed those like crazy, and then I got very into John le Carre books. Um, and really, very early on, and even still, I'm really just like I read the New York Times review of books, and I read reviews, and I pick things out that I love. The people I love the most are Richard Ford. I love Colson Whitehead an intense amount. I love I love John Updike. I love I love the her name always goes out of my brain. The Irish woman, the normal people woman, Sally Rooney. I've loved all of Sally Rooney's books. Um, the other Irish woman, the Small Things Like These woman. I can't remember her name right now. I've read all of hers and I love it. Um, as a Canadian, I've loved so much of Alice Munro's work. Her legacy is somewhat tainted now in a strange way, but her writing about domesticity was always like there's something about the way she writes about the way men and women are towards each other that is like a universal truth that doesn't seem to ever age for some reason. I would say those are my favorites. Ben Lerner is another one that I love very much. I find his work really challenging, but I like it a lot. Uh,
Let me ask you this. If you're reading a book and you're not feeling it, do you have to finish it or can you set it aside and never come back to it again?
I just stop and I never come back to it ever again. Even if I bought it, I don't care. And they just pile up in my house. My wife hates it. I just think if it's not good, I don't like it.
And that's it for the latest episode of Songwriters on Process. You can find all of the old episodes on all major streaming platforms and probably some minor ones as well. You can also find them on the Songwriters on Process website. I started the site back in 2011, so that means there are hundreds upon hundreds of interviews with some of the world's best songwriters. So take a deep dive into some of those episodes. They are all great. Of course, I'm biased. Also, shameless plug, my book, Desolation, a Heavy Metal Memoir by Mark Morton with Benno Papari, that is me, is out now on Hachette Books and in all major bookstores. Mark is a good friend of mine. He is the guitarist in the metal band Lamb of God. And so we collaborated on his memoir. I'm biased, but that's a damn good book. Again, it is called Desolation, a Heavy Metal Memoir. And lastly, if you want to get in touch, go to the Songwriters on Process website. You can fill out a handy contact form and it'll get to me that way. You can also email me at ben@songwritersonprocess.com. I'm all ears. Send me your comments, your suggestions, your complaints, people you want me to interview. I get great suggestions all the time. I can't respond to all of the emails because I get a lot of them, but I do read all of them. And let me know your thoughts. If you have ideas for people you want me to interview, there's your chance. And with that, I am out. See you next time.